Hey there, guys. It is Josh Siwasepl, and welcome to what I'm calling Review Roundup. I'm going to talk about some games that I've played. If you've been a fan of the channel for a while, you know that I used to do something called Final Thoughts. I would talk about games. I'd talk about the good, the bad, how it was like to Let's Play, and an overall kind of summary of it. They kind of take some time to do, and I would love to get back into them. But there's quite a few games that I have not touched on. And I want to talk about those games. I'm not going to do full-blown big reviews, but I'm going to talk about the games that I haven't done yet and hopefully catch up in the review roundup. I don't know, let's just say 5. Let's talk about 5. That good? I'm going to talk a couple minutes about it each game. Let's get started with the first one. Also, I should note, no spoilers. So if you haven't played any of these games, don't worry, I'm not going to spoil anything. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. First up, Deadly Premonition. My god, I played this game on PS3. The frame rate was not the best. Visually, it looks like a PS2 game that was ported to a PS3 game, which, if you know any about the history, it's true. Working on the PS2 originally. However, it is a buggy, weird as shit game that I wholeheartedly recommend. I legit cannot go out of my way enough to recommend this game. I loved it. It's fantastic. It is clunky. It is weirdly mixed audio. It's got bad frame rate. The story is batshit insane. It's got weird choices in its design, but all of this stuff kind of culminates to do something great. And I love it, and I legit love it. I've bought it on Switch, and it's on Switch now. There's really no reason not to own it. I think it's like 20 bucks, and if you catch it on sale, it's cheaper. I will say on the Switch version, it also does not have the best frame rate and the sound. Like, you're still going to get the same issues as the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 versions, I would imagine. Actually, I don't even think the director's cut is on the 360. I think it's just the original game. I think the director's cut is only on Switch, PS3, and PC, if it's still available on PC. It's got, like I said, it's got some weird choices. Some of the missions can take just a little bit too long to drag on. I can definitely think of a few off the top of my head. It's not a perfect game, but it was a fantastic experience, and that's what I recommend to anybody. If you're looking for a great video game experience, this is one to play. Don't go in it looking for a great game. Go in for a great experience, and that's what you should do. Next on the chopping block. Crash Team Racing on the PlayStation 1. Fantastic game. I don't really have much I can say about a racing game, just because what can you really say? It controlled great once you actually learn it, and you gotta learn it. Someone amazingly made a video for me showing me how to play, and that made things go a lot easier. I do think that if I had played it as a kid, I probably would have liked it more than Mario Kart 64. That was always like my kart racing game as a kid. Friends would come over, I would play that, and we would have a bunch of fun playing Mario Kart 64. If I would have known about Crash Team Racing when I was a kid and actually played it. That was a weird statement. I did know about it when I was a kid. I just never played it. If I had played it as a kid, it probably would have been better, and it probably would have been a regular in my household for it. I mean, great game. It's amazing that there's just so much content packed into it, especially for a single player experience. You don't think about that when it comes to kart racers a lot. You know, oh, you get, the cups, you go through the cups, but there's actual story, there's a hub world. It's like Diddy Kong Racing, but better. Honestly, great game, solid. The PS1 version, I think, still holds up, even though there is a remake that is out, which I'll talk about at some point. The original PlayStation version is still great. Grab it while you can on the PlayStation Store, because the PS3 is shutting down fast. So hurry up and grab that. I would highly recommend it. Tomb Raider 2. Oh boy, what a doozy. I hated Tomb Raider 1. I made that very clear. People have definitely tried to defend it, and I've seen their points, but I just feel like overall as a package, Tomb Raider 1 was a terrible game. Tomb Raider 2 is not as bad, but it is still not a good game. The controls are still awful. The level design is still not puzzle. Like, it's overly complex for no reason. The level design suddenly isn't a puzzle. It's just now you have to climb over 18 different things just to get to one spot. It's not a puzzle. People criticize the Uncharted games a lot, and even the modern Tomb Raider games to an extent, where it's just you're climbing for no reason. I know people poked fun at like God of War 2018 because there were just segments where you're just climbing up a mountain and all you're doing is climbing. You're just pressing, up, and then occasionally you gotta press square to go over, right? And it's the same thing with Uncharted. Uncharted's a bit more quote unquote in depth with the climbing, where you actually have to know where you're going. But there is no difference from clunkily climbing over 18 different objects in Tomb Raider just to get to a destination than it is to climbing smoothly up a mountain in Uncharted for visual spectacle. There's no difference other than Tomb Raider 2 sucks. It's not fun to clunkily climb over things. Uncharted is smooth climbing and it's visually appealing, and it's usually there to progress the story when he's talking to someone or talking over the radio, or you're going somewhere that makes sense in like a physical space. Tomb Raider 2, while it actually is a physical space and it's the area you're climbing, it's not enjoyable. It's not fun to climb in that game. It's so clunky and overbearing, and the mechanics of the game sucks. It's terrible. I don't like Tomb Raider 2 either. It's better than Tomb Raider 1. Tomb Raider 1 is on the bottom and Tomb Raider 2 is above it. I'm sure if I ever decide to play Tomb Raider 3, it will be better than Tomb Raider 2. At least in Tomb Raider 2, you got the benefit of being able to save whenever you want, so I could save scum through some of this shit. The game went on for way too long. It should have ended like 3 hours earlier. There's just needless death, needless jumps, needless obstacles, other than the fact of, hey, you need to make it from point A to point B. Instead of making this area enjoyable, let's just put obstacles in your path that annoy you. It just brings my question up from the first one again. What's enjoyable about this series nowadays? Nothing. There is nothing in this series that is enjoyable. The story is barely there. The movement is terrible. The puzzles aren't really that good and well designed. Like, they're puzzles. I'm not going to deny it. It's a puzzle game. It's a puzzle platformer. It's just not good at doing puzzle or platform. So when the best of the PlayStation originals is not good, what's its value today other than it started a game series that eventually got good? It doesn't seem interesting to me. I know I've had a few people ask me, are you going to play Tomb Raider 3? Yeah, maybe not. It's a rough one. It's a rough one to want to go back to. It really is. People criticize me for using the cheats, but that's only so I could get through the game. Otherwise, it would be such a slog to get through. But yeah, don't recommend Tomb Raider 2. Not really that good. Next game. Resident Evil HD. So this is a port of a remake. As far as I know, it's an extremely faithful remake to the original Resident Evil on the PlayStation, just with better looking graphics and textures and whatnot. It's still in the, the forced camera perspective. It was great. I had only played up to that point Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil 7, and I'd seen someone play Resident Evil 5 and 6. So, not knowing hardly anything about Resident Evil, I went into this with somewhat lacking expectations because I didn't expect it to play like Resident Evil 4 or 7 because those games are just so different, as well as 5 and 6. They're just so different. And I love 4, and I really loved 7. 7 was fantastic. And you look at it, and I played Resident Evil, and you see exactly where all the staples of the genre come from. and you see what made Resident Evil so great at its base level, and you see how it diverged with the later games and how they weren't as good. And Resident Evil 1 just holds up so great. The level design is fantastic. The way they've mapped out the mansion is great. How you deal with the enemies and the puzzles and actually going through the interesting story. It's what I would imagine the complete opposite of Tomb Raider would be. Whereas if I would have actually played this on the original PlayStation, then I would have gotten the same experience, just uglier, which doesn't make a game bad. An ugly game does not mean it's bad, but it's just the only difference between the original Resident Evil and PlayStation and this one. I'm imagining, I've never gone back and played the original Resident Evil, is the visual. So Resident Evil has so much value as a game, and I fully recommend it. And it was such a scary experience too. Like, I'm typically not good with survival horror games. The tension is what really gets me in it. And this game is full of tension. Not knowing what's going to be on the other side of the door opens, and then even then you can't see the rest of the room. The camera's just panned on you until you walk forward, and then bam, there's a zombie. Oh shit. But I mean, it's just great. And to know that even in my playthrough I actually miss things, that makes it even better. To think that I can just go back and find more. You know, not only just the fact that I played Jill, and then I could still play Chris, and then he has a different story, but just that there were also cutscenes that I didn't see, which is great to know. But yeah, highly recommend Resident Evil HD. Fantastic game. How many is that? The Premonition, I think that's 4. So yeah, let's go to a 5th one. Oh, well, I get to talk about Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled anyway. Yeah, great remake. I do feel like it was definitely harder than the original game, like ever so slightly. Granted, it could be a learning curve, but it does feel like they made that game to be more competitive, if that makes sense. So they tweaked it just slightly to make it more difficult, because even running through like the things I remembered from the original game, Nitro Fueled kept pushing me back. I eventually got it. Like, I got down the mechanics of it again, technically for a first time since it's a remake, and just like had a blast playing it. I did stick around for some of the Grand Prix that they introduced, and, you know, played the new levels and things like that. I stuck with it for a few months until I just got tired of that like battle pass kind of feel that they were doing. But I mean, overall, great remake, fantastic game. It's still being supported as far as I know. I haven't kept up with it, so I don't know if they're still doing the Grand Prix. I would imagine they are, and still giving new characters and things like that. I'm sure. Although I think they added the ability to actually do microtransactions now, which is not super interesting. It's definitely disappointing to hear, but I would still recommend it, even if as a single player experience. You're getting Crash Team Racing with a new coat of paint and new characters, and just a fun game. Like, yeah, games are meant to be fun. Come on, it's fun. I'd highly recommend Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled. All right, that is 5 games that I've condensed down into maybe 15 minutes. We'll see. I don't know how this is going to edit out. But if you guys want to hear more of me rambling about games that I played that I haven't reviewed yet, by all means, let me know in the comments. And I will be back with 5 more games to do the review roundup. But for right now, I'm going to head to the next thing, whatever it may be. And I will see you guys there.